Hi, my name is Ishkara, and I am doing the NFGeeks video challenge. So what is my type? My type is the ENTP. Sorry, I'm just going to move this over so that I'm not constantly looking back and forth. And I am primarily interested in, that's a tough question. Well, actually, when I was thinking about this, at first I really didn't know what to answer, but I've come up with an answer. And the thing is, it really is everything. I want to know how it works, how everything works, why it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, is it going to work? I want to know what the flaw is. I'm always looking for flaws. And how to fix them, how to make them better. And often that's just what I want. Like, I want to know what the flaw is and if it can be fixed. I actually don't really care about fixing it. Like, I sort of do. And then once I realize it can be fixed, it's really that part, it does get hard for me to finish with. So, like, I'm actually very interested in sort of theoretical stuff, and I really do like. I was comparing this to like those strategy games where you start out and you only see the square piece of the map that you're on, right? I want to know the whole map, and I want to know it in detail, and why it works, what doesn't work, but it's more like that's exactly what it is. Like, I project into all the possibilities to do with everything. So, like a comment that I made once was like, if I were religious, I would want to swap heads with God. Because that seems to be my goal in life, is to know that much about everything. How do you relate to your temperament? How do you relate to your temperament? How do I relate to my temperament? That's kind of a weird question. Well, I know that it was a big relief when I actually read the description for the ENTP and realized I was normal. Some things were not very nice, especially on the weaknesses, but they were accurate, and it actually made me feel like I wasn't such a freak. Because that's really been my experience everywhere that I am, is I know that I'm really different. And being an being an ENT woman is, I think, really different from being an ENTP man, because there is that image of that caddish guy. Like, think of Sean Spencer, right? Like, there's a level of acceptance of that in society. Well, and sort of that caddish guy who knows too much for his own good, right? Like, it's kind of cool. For women, I've made it cool. I've made it mine. I've owned it. But it wasn't easy. That was really different, and I knew it. And so did everyone else. And it helps if you're okay with it. But when you're going through phases in your life when people and yourself are not okay with being different, that's hard. What got me interested in MBTI? Well, for one thing, in high school we had to take the MBTI, and at that point I didn't really get into it very much, but I'm not even sure I found out, like, no, I did find out my type, because I found out that I was INTP, but they didn't make a big deal about it. Yeah, and as I said, they thought I was INTP at that point. And that kind of makes sense, because in high school I was quite shy and insecure, and I did seem more introverted, and I would have answered the questions more like an introvert, like, and I think for extrovert N's, like this, This is going to sound kind of typist, but it's not. I think that being an extrovert N, it's not just that, like especially in NT, it's actually a specific area of getting energy from people and things around you. That energy is, it does get drained if you are always talking about what other people want to talk about, and you're never able to go with that, I have an idea, right? If you're always having to wear some sort of social mask, it's difficult, and it is very draining. At least it is for me. And I find that in a scenario where you have a lot of SJs who are not interested in intellectual stuff, because there are a lot of SJs and every type that's interested in a lot of things, right? But in high school you get a very mixed bag, right? And even in a lot of job places, unless you sort of branch out and manage to get into something where like you have to have some sort of level of university or something like that, it can be a lot of talking about books isolates you, or talking about something intellectual isolates you, and so I think it for extroverts who are NTs, they have to deal with that isolation, and that is draining, right? That being in a room full of people and still being alone. I mean, every type has to deal with that sometimes, but I think it's very poignant for an N who is an E. And so that's where I think that a lot of extrovert Ns think that they are introverts. Because when you ask the question, do you get drained being around people? Well, they often have to ask themselves what kind of people, right? And honestly, like people who are not interested in things is incredibly draining. Or people who are interested in maintaining status quo above all else is incredibly draining. Like I can sit there and argue and argue and argue, but some people, I have discovered that not everybody loves debate as much as I do. And so there's a lot of wearing masks that goes on in those scenarios. I try to avoid them. I try to be who I am wherever I am so that I'm never called out on it. So I never have to wear a mask, because then when it chips away, it's very difficult for people to discover that the person they thought they knew was totally different. I've realized that that is a social kindness. I didn't realize that when I was younger, but I've realized it now, that being that social kindness comes from a level of authenticity. Yet being authentic is hard sometimes, because I notice how uncomfortable people can be sometimes. I was penalized for it a lot when I was a kid, a lot when I was growing up. I was told that I was being embarrassing or rude or whatever because, the teacher would say something that was, at one time the teacher basically said that no man would stand for a woman to have two husbands, but that it's perfectly reasonable for a man to have two wives, and that, and that women basically have no backbone. I had to answer that. So my hand goes up and I'm arguing and arguing and arguing and arguing, and I argue him into a corner, and he has to admit that no, that's not true. What he said was not accurate. That there are many instances of women who have more than one husband where the husbands are okay with it. Polygamy is, or bigamy period, and polyandry and stuff like that, these are not social norms, but they exist. And you can't just say that no man would be that way, because men are complex beings, right? Like, you know, we are not a stereotype. Men are not a stereotype. The stereotype is what prevents men from being who they are. Anyway, after that class, I was told, somebody came up to me and said that I was such a bully. And, you know, I could have understood if she said that I was a bully to the teacher, but she said I was a bully to every person in that classroom because I made them feel stupid. I was blindsided. Like, if you don't feel up to participating, that's fine. But if somebody demonstrating what they're good at makes you feel stupid, and that's why I tend not to hang out with people like that. Because, like, that really, like, I just didn't even know how to react to that. I still don't know how to react to that. And you know what? That was 15 years ago. So more than 15 years ago. And it still triggers something into me. Like, I don't get that. And I guess that's what the MBTI, that's how it's impacted my life, is because now I look and I see, okay, from that person's perspective, what mattered most of all was the social cohesiveness. And what mattered most of all, well, actually, no, I think that she was probably an FI user, and therefore, like, that was kind of what it was. But, you know, she could have been an FE lead too, or something. But definitely, like, rather than caring about what was accurate and factual and true, or what is a good description for what actually happens, all that she cared about was that there wasn't conflict. All right, and then, so show a possession, book, object that, to the camera. Ta-da! Ta-da! So this is Neil Gaiman, great author, and he, this is actually not my favorite book by him, but I don't have my favorite book because I keep loaning it out to people, because I really like hearing their reactions when they read it. My favorite book is Good Omens by Neil Gaiman. And I really, really, really like seeing what sticks out most in that book, you know? Like, to me, it's, you take Leave It to Beaver, blow it up, mix in, like, angels, demons, and whatnot, put it all back together, and see what Leave It to Beaver does. It's kind of fun. But other people remember things like the flaming car chase, or, you know, this one specific point that they thought was absolutely hilarious, or the fact that there were funny footnotes, you know, like, and it's so bizarre. Like, you know, I mean, I like all those things too, but it's kind of amusing to me to get to psychoanalyze myself and other people when they read, when they read something that I've read and then can't help talking about it, because I'm making them. And then The Better Angels of Our Nature. This is such a wonderful book, because I hope that people who read it finally lay to rest attitudes like that the world is worse than it used to be. You know, when I was your age, people were nice. No, they were not. Anyway, and there's facts to back it up. Anyway, I'm going to pause, I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to restart, because for some reason I can't post greater than 15 minutes. So here we go.